Hello, this is Tia and welcome to another video. Today we're doing another story. This one's another original story based off one dream I had back in 2015. Of course, there are some parts that I omitted out just for flow of story. But yeah, basically I wanted to share it with you, but I also wanted to make a spin out of it. If you like these sort of things and you want to see more dreamlike stories like that, I can definitely see if I can apply it. But only if you want it. If not, I won't worry too much about it. Because, I've got other things to do. Well, currently, I don't have much now, but stories are fun to write. And if I can write other stuff, I'll write other stuff. So let's get right into it, I guess. Yeah. As you can tell from the title of this video, it's the 722. Yeah. There is no time-related thing in this one like it was in the first draft. But it's basically something happens at 7:22 in the morning. That's the point of the story. Just when rewriting it, I didn't put it in there, and it's fine without it, but 7:22, it's supposed to be the time when something happens that changes everything. It's the number that changes everything. I woke up with a start as my alarm clock began blaring almost out of nowhere. My eyes snapped open as I stared up at the white ceiling above me, hearing the annoying alarm ring in my ears before I turned it off, unconsciously, with my hand before I sat up. The sun was starting to come up through the window as I wiped the sleepers from my eyes. It was another day of school, no doubt, and a long day at that. I swiftly climbed out of bed and walked over to my dresser, where I picked out the clothes I wanted to wear for the day, taking off my super comfy panda pajamas as I did so. Folding them carefully, did not do that very carefully, onto the dresser for tonight. I slipped on a simple magenta tee with skinny blue jeans as I glanced around for my white sneakers, quickly finding them where they should be, which was by the foot of my bed if you wanted to know. Once I finished fastening my shoes, I went over to the door to grab my pastel-painted white bag covered in colorful splotches of pink, blue, green, yellow, and purple. It did have some smudges of dirt on it, but I didn't really care, as I zipped it up and slung it over my shoulder, making sure everything that I had needed was in there. My mind was all haze as I walked out of my bedroom and down the hallway to find it surprisingly empty. There was a plate with a freshly baked breakfast burrito for me as I sat down to tuck into it. I assumed that Mom was probably in her room or in the shower in the bathroom, not paying too much mind to that as I finished my meal. I didn't have the time to wait and wish her a good day. I had to get to school, otherwise I might be late. That was the last thing I wanted to have happen. It just wasn't the sort of thing I would do. After I was finished with my breakfast, I stood up and picked up the plate. It was a bit greasy with cheese and bacon pieces, but no doubt would vanish once put in the dishwasher. I walked over to the sink and gently placed it in. I suddenly heard a faint sound that drew my curiosity. It was a sound that I always had heard ever so often. It was strange, but I had never paid too much attention to it. Probably it was just my imagination anyway. I walked away from the sink and towards the front. My new keyboard is not helping me very much. No. The front door, still hearing the ticking noise, but it seemed to be going faster than I remembered. Was I imagining this, or were my parents hiding a clock somewhere to trick me? It was something Dad would do to drive everyone crazy until we figured out what the sound was. For all I knew, it was a reminder for me to hurry up and get to school. Yeah, that was probably it. I had nothing to be worried about. A smile appeared on my face as I closed the door to my house, which was older than both of my parents combined. Maybe even older than my grandparents. This neighborhood was an older part of the small town we lived in. Some would even say it was the original part of the town before its extensions, and I could see why they would think that as I passed the ancient tree near our house. Its trunk was dark and very thick around the middle, its branches gnarly and leaves rustling at the slightest touch from the wind. There weren't as many leaves in the tree at this time of year. Whether or not it was a sign of its old age, or that spring had come earlier than expected, I didn't know. That tree was part of our history, whether we knew it or not. It was pretty old, just like a good majority of the trees around here. I walked to the edge of my driveway, looking left and right to ensure no bikers were riding on the sidewalk before heading on my way. Gripping my bag tightly, I always had to be careful to keep my belongings close to me, just as a precaution in case anyone tried to steal something from me. Well, I couldn't be sure why they would want a bag full of school supplies. I suppose it was better to be safe than sorry. However, as I continued onwards, the trees giving me a bit of shade from the morning sunbeams, I could almost be certain I could still hear the ticking. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere. The sound distant but still there. Where was it coming from? What was going on? I wasn't sure. Once I made it out of my neighborhood, though, the sound had seemed to fade and disappear completely. Not a single trace could be found. The thought eased my nerves slightly, though not by much. I still had to get to school. That was my main focus as I walked on the sidewalk, sidestepping the cracks as if I were doing some sort of parkour challenge, which I was normally pretty bad at when it came to games, especially online games. It took me quite a few minutes to realize, though, during my journey to school, that my surroundings had gone strangely quiet, almost too silent for my liking. I knew I was only about 5 minutes from school, and the thought shouldn't bother me. I was probably tuning out all the noise, but as I neared a street to cross, I found that it was strangely empty. Not too many cars roaring down the street like I had expected. It almost seemed vacant and abandoned. No birds chirping in the trees. No rustling of grass from no squirrels, chipmunks, and other landed creatures. Absolutely nothing. Hello? Is anyone out there? I called, partially confused, when my voice echoed with no response. Why should I expect one anyway? Maybe there was a storm coming that I didn't know about, and everyone was staying inside. Then why hadn't my parents told me? Where was everyone? Was there something I was missing? Suddenly, I heard a faint sound that sounded like it was coming from underneath me. Yes, it was! The ticking noise I had been hearing for the past couple of weeks off and on. What was it doing down here, though? What did it have to do with the silence I was hearing? Was something wrong? I pushed the thought aside as I crossed the street safely, ignoring the ticking sound, even though it seemed to be growing faster and faster in speed. Seriously, I had nothing to worry about. This was just me staying up too late playing video games. It wasn't anything major. I could easily fix it by going to bed early tonight. It couldn't be real. It had to be a dream. If it was, though, then why wasn't I waking up? I was only a few minutes away from school when I felt the hairs at the back of my neck standing on end. Goosebumps crawled all over my arms as I shuddered. But I wasn't sure why until I saw it. I saw the flash of light before I heard the sound. In the distance, an explosion of light engulfed one or two neighborhoods. Roar rang in my ears as it was swept off my feet, landing hard on the ground as I screamed in pain. Or was I screaming? I couldn't tell. I knew I heard a scream. I could feel pain. My head hurt. Every part of me hurt, but I wasn't sure why. I could barely lift my head as the screams failed to register anymore. All the sound in my ears. What had happened? What was going on? Before I could even figure out what I needed to do, my whole world faded into darkness. I saw nothingness. It almost felt worse than it had happened, instantaneously. Everything was a haze as I finally stirred from unconsciousness. Everything around me felt unfamiliar and strange. Nothing that I had ever seen before. Where exactly was I? What wasn't I... What? What even was that sentence? Why wasn't I dead? Or was I? What had even happened? Millions of questions began to bombard my mind as I tried to think some reasoning behind everything. When everything began to come into focus, I wasn't in pain anymore, which was a relief. Yet, when I opened my eyes, I found myself lying in a hospital bed, looking up at the blank white ceiling. I didn't dare move, nor could I with the restraints on my wrists and ankles, probably to keep me still so I wouldn't hurt myself. How bad was my injuries? Would I be okay? Where were my parents in all of this? I turned my head left and right, finding myself alone in the room. The place did seem reassuring, though, with brightly colored posters smiling at me. I wasn't smiling, though. Nothing about any of this was either happy or cheerful. It was nice to know that someone had bothered to help me. As for everyone else who had been within radius of the explosion, I don't know. I couldn't know. How many people were killed or injured? How many people had gone missing? I didn't know. But the thought of never seeing my parents again hit me hard, a pang of sadness filling me as I stared up at the ceiling once again. Was this it? Was this the start of something entirely new for me? A new chapter in my life that literally knocked me off my own feet? Literally uprooted everything I had ever known? Taken away the very foundation I had stood on only to give me something new? Could I live with this? I wasn't sure, but it wasn't like I had much of a choice. This was my life now, whether I was ready for it or not. I had been given a second chance, and no doubt I'd treasure it, because I would never know when that chance would be taken from me again. This time, for good. Unfortunately, this is going to be it for this episode, or video, or whatever you want to call this chapter, this story, as a whole. Yeah, none of these are planned to be serious, but you never know. Something short might one day end up being a whole book. You never know, which is nice. I just tell stories, create stories, share them, show them off. If people like them, people like them. If people don't, meh. I'm just having fun. And yeah, that's kind of important. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.